beginning of the
what did you say, Yosef?
you started with no, how you call it?
Amura Shachar.
No. Talking about the additional for Ta'anit.
After the Amidah.
Yeah, after the Amidah, you start with the regular
Slichot, yes.
Regular selichot. Just the beginning, or all the way, and then you jump to in the end. You jump to Ta'anit Esther.
You have to ask them, Daniel, about the minhag of the Sfaradim. He wants to know, how do they do it after the Amidah? What's the minhag for the Sfaradim? Regular Ana, the David, Avinu Malkeinu. Then you go to Ta'anit Esther. And you follow Ta'anit Esther, and that will take you to the end. That will take you directly to the end. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We are on Gimel on the base. We are on 3B. 3B. And the art scroll, we are 3B, number page 2. Page 2. Okay. The last thing we just started speaking out yesterday about the idea if a person makes a certain condition, certain conditions, whether they will work, or certain conditions that might not work. So let's see the Gemara. The Gemara says, I'm going to start. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Morning, everybody. First word of the line is Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. And then the art scroll is 3B2 towards the top left corner. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Homer l'chaveiro. So it's just a little review for while everyone's getting ready. Homer l'chaveiro. Someone says to his friend, Amana shelo tishbateni shvius. We said, if a person says to his friend, I'm giving you this loan on the condition that Shemitah does not take off the loan, we say you cannot make such a condition. You can't make a condition that you say Shemitah shouldn't take off the loan when Shemitah takes off the loan. Correct? The condition is an invalid condition. Right? Sometimes you have a condition that's sometimes that makes no sense. It's not true. So it's not a true statement. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning.
Morning. So that's now. So the Gemara says, Lema Ksava Shmuel. Let us say that Shmuel holds Masne al Masha Kasavatoru. You're making a t'nai, you're making a condition against what's written in the Torah. And if you make a condition, v'cholam masneh, anybody who makes a condition that's against the Torah, that condition is not valid. Right? Everybody have the Gemara? Nathan, you have the Gemara? Morris? We are on Gimel on the base, 3B, art scroll 3B2, top left column. So if anybody makes a condition against something that's written in the Torah, it's just like you're trying to uproot a law of the Torah. So if you're trying to get rid of a law of the Torah says Shemitah does take off a loan, and you're making a condition that Shemitah should not take off the loan. It doesn't work. So cholamasna masha kosev b'Torah to know about that. Anybody who makes a condition to go against the Torah, a buyer, a seller cannot, you can't create conditions that are against the Torah. So that's seemingly the opinion over here of Shmuel. The condition won't work, even though we both agreed to this condition, but it was a condition that's against the Torah, and therefore, since it's a condition that's against the Torah, that agreement will not be valid, right? That's what the Gemara is saying at this point. Yes. Right. Right.
credit and he's paying 4%.
Right.
Or 4.5% he's paying. Now, that's one of his businesses. His other business, he has a regular business, and he just got, let's say, one of these government loans for a smaller percent rate, for 3%. Can he charge his own business interest? Like, I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but it's like
you're saying you're charging your own business. What's the case? You got a loan. First, you got a loan.
he has a regular loan from a bank
Right.
at a high percent.
Right.
Now he got one of these government loans at a smaller percent rate.
And he wants to
And he's saying business A got that line of credit. Business B was working with the bank. Business B doesn't need the bank now because he can take this line of credit for a smaller interest rate. Is that legal?
He's charging himself.
He's charging himself. Can you do that? That is, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Can you do that?
So he's really, you say it's him. You're saying your question is, but the question is, he's charging himself. But the question is, he created a business entity. It's the business that he's charging the business the interest, right? Is it right? Is there partners in the deal? Okay, family. Okay, but family are also you can't charge family. You know what I'm saying? The question is, were all the loans owned by the family? Meaning all the businesses were both owned by the family. So the family is charging, so the owners are charging themselves interest, right? We have to ask the question, but okay. Okay, so the Gemara says, I mean, if it sounds like that, if the whole business is owned by the same people, so it sounds like they're just charging themselves. They're not charging somebody else interest. Yeah, I'm saying that's what it would seem like. Just to make sure that all the owners are exact same owners in both businesses. Not that this, because if they're not exactly the same owners in both businesses, like Morris is pointing out, then it could then you're getting into an issue because there's owners of this business that are making money off owners of another Jewish business, right? If this entity, this business ownership partnership is two different businesses and this have different ownership, so then first, if they're not the same owners, not everyone's exactly not the same owner. That would be one question, and the other question would be if there are different levels of partnership, how that would work. I mean, one's a 50% partner here, one's a 25% partner here. Then that might also make a difference, perhaps.
What is the loophole for you collecting interest?
There's not a loophole, but what they do is they form it as a business investment instead of a loan. So that would have to be formulated with a heteriska, and go see how it's done properly. The heteriska. That's the way. Can't be a loan. I mean, I'm not talking about. We have to know if there's an issue in your case. Might not be an issue in that case. So, in general, if a person is not ready to give an interest-free loan, so then they formulate it as a business investment, and then it could be done that way. It has to be done right. Okay, so the Gemara says, anybody that makes a condition against what it says in the Torah, that condition would not be valid. That's what it seemed like his opinion is, because he says you can't make such a condition. I can't make a condition with my fellow guy that Shemitah doesn't take off the loan. The Torah says Shemitah takes off the loan, and I can't make a condition against the Torah, right? I don't have that power. So the Gemara questions this. What do you mean? We find Shmuel saying something which seems to indicate I can make a condition, which seems to, as long as both parties agree to it, I could make a condition that doesn't go in sync with the Torah. Let's see the Gemara's question. V'yitma, we have another case. Someone says to his friend, I'm selling you this item. I'm selling you this item on the condition that there's no violation of the rule of Ona. Ona is called overcharging, but it works both ways. The overcharging means, let's say, I think a good example might be a lottery ticket. A lottery ticket, let's say, is $1 or $2. That's the That's the price for a lottery ticket. It would seem to me, if a person goes to somebody and says, I want to charge you $1.50 for the dollar lottery ticket, $1.25, they overcharge it. That's not the price. Let's say it's the exact same common convenience as everything else. Not that the guy is delivering you the lottery ticket or something like that. That might be a case that there's a fixed price on it, because today we don't have generally so many things with a fixed price. Or I would give an example. Let's say now there's a prohibition to overcharge, and there's a prohibition to and also it goes both ways. The buyer, and if someone is selling you for a price that's not the price. Let's say a guy wants to give you the Ty Cobb or Mickey Mantle rookie baseball card, and the old lady comes to you and says, I have some baseball cards. I got Mickey Mantle, I got Reggie Jackson's rookie card. I want to sell it to you for $1 a piece. You know that's not the price. The price is it's much more than $1 for those cards. So there's a clear market price that and you also would have a responsibility to tell the person. I'm saying there would be a prohibition you have responsibility. You should know that the price is much greater than this. The price, it's not $1. You think that the price is $1. The price is much greater. The person is, so that's called, also it goes both ways. So that's a little bit about let's say a person comes with gold. Good morning, Mr. Rapport. A person comes with gold and they have a gold necklace. And they want it, and they said, and they want to charge $100. I want to pay you $100 an ounce for a gold necklace, but the gold necklace is worth close to $2,000 an ounce. So you're not paying the right. It would seem that those are some of the things that might have a fixed value. Most things might not have fixed value. Okay, these are halachic questions that need to be discussed with the posek, but there's certain type. There is this law in the Torah of overcharging or undercharging for certain things, and there would be there's sort of different laws regarding that. Depending on how much was the overcharge, whether the deal would be off, or there's a certain amount that people are mochel, people are forgiving. There's a certain amount that the deal will be off, and so on. There's different laws regarding this law of ona. And I presume the Torah's reason behind it is to protect the buyers and protect the sellers, that the people should not be gypped in doing business dealings. So that's some of the laws of ona. What is, okay. Someone said, say it again. Oh yeah, yes. So here's the case. Someone says to his friend that I'm selling you this item. I'm selling you this item with the condition that you will not come to me in the future and to claim in the future that I did that the price wasn't a right price. That you shouldn't come to say that I overcharged. I'm selling it to you with this condition that you don't have the right to come later on and claim that I overcharged you. So what's the law? Rav Omer, yesh lo alav ona. Rav says, even if the price, if the price was not the proper price, you overcharged the guy, even though, yes, thank you. Someone says to his friend, Almanat, on the condition, she'ein lecha, that you do not have a lie to me, ona, you do not have a claim of overcharging. So the question is, would that condition be effective or not? Can I make such a condition? And at the end of the day, I agreed to that. That you and the buyer agreed to the seller, that I cannot come to you later on to say that you overcharged me. Yeah, yes, it's the price gouging. We're talking about here is a set market. There's a set market rate. Now, you could identify, most things today might not have a set market rate, right? But there are certain things. I think an ounce of gold has a set market rate. An ounce of silver has a set market rate. What? Gas is not really so set market. As you see, there's a tremendous fluctuation in gas prices. All right. So I don't know if I don't know if we'll call that a set market rate, but there are certain things that have a set market rate. And here we're talking about overcharging for something which has a set market rate. I wonder if if a stock has a certain rate, it's selling at a certain rate, and then somehow the person sells you the stock. Not, I don't know how that would happen today, but not at the market rate, so to speak. So if someone goes ahead and he says they made this condition that you will not be able to have any claims of overcharging, so Rav says the buyer has the right, he still has the right later on to come back to the recourse, to come back to the seller and to say you overcharged me, even though they made a condition that I cannot come back to you for that. But the fact is, the Torah says there's a prohibition of overcharging, and you cannot go ahead and say give up that law. The law says you can't overcharge, and the law says if the overcharge is over a certain amount, if it's over a sixth of the value, then the deal is off. So therefore, you don't have the power to go ahead and agree to such a thing. That's one understanding of why he doesn't allow this type of condition to be. However, Shmuel says, "Ein lo olav ona." Shmuel says that you have the ability to go ahead and make such a condition. Shmuel says you could go ahead and say that we agreed that you're not going to come back to me to say that I overcharged you, and it would work. Such a condition would work. And the buyer that bought it with this condition is forgiving his right that the Torah gave him. The Torah gave a person the right to say to a seller, come back to the seller and say, you gypped me. You gypped me. You gypped me over. You charged me. I came into the store. I bought a lottery ticket. I bought $1 lottery ticket, and you charged me $1.25. You gypped me, and I have a right to go at the Torah. So but that's Torah gives me the right to come back to the seller and say, this protects the buyer, and also protects the seller if the seller is selling something underpriced. But if you both agreed to forgo, that means you're forgiving your monetary right that you have. I have a monetary right as a buyer, or the seller has a monetary right as a seller to say, I want the deal off because it wasn't a proper sale price, because I overpriced or underpriced. But here you both agreed at the get-go that you're willing to give up that right, and it's a financial right. So financial right, you could go ahead and give up. Therefore, Shmuel says that you have the right to give up this right. So even though the Torah gave you this right, gave us the law. What'd you say, Jaime?
It's a protection. The Torah gives you a protection under the law.
Exactly. The Torah gave the buyer, the seller, you're protected. And you're protected from, and this is an amazing thing. What'd you say, Jaime?
Protected from being overcharged.
Exactly. The person, the Torah is protected. But now that you willingly said you forgive that right, you could forgive that right of protection. That's what Shmuel says. These have a set. What are the possibilities? So I think it says that land doesn't have like a market value. I think there might be certain things. Real estate might be exceptions. There's a lot of laws regarding these rules of law, but there might be certain items that might, I think land might be an exception to the rule. We have to see more details about that. Does land also have, there might be amounts in real estate also that might have a market value, because real estate is unique. Every property is usually a different property. Not everything is the same property. You could have the same watch, you could have the same lottery ticket, you could have the same eggs and the same milk, but every, what do you say, Jaime?
If we now learn that you have the right to waive a protection that the Torah offers you, and in this case, it's protection against overcharging, do you also have the right to waive not to be charged interest or other Torah laws that you could waive?
Very good. It's great. No, person, right? The person can't waive that, right? A person can't waive. A person can't say that I'm going to take. I'm happy to pay you interest, even though the Torah. That's a good point. Here, that's clear that a person can't waive that. A person can't say that, the Torah gave me that protection that I, as a borrower, not allowed to pay interest, but I'm willing to pay interest anyway. We don't have that right. And yet over here, he gives you the right to go ahead and be forgiving of this because of this law. I mean, it's interesting yes, it's interesting that we're much more strict. We don't give this waiver at all when it comes to interest. And here, according to Shmuel, we have the right to go ahead and have this waiver, and you can forgive your right. You want to say something, Nathan? Now, so the Gemara is asking, there seems to be a contradiction. The contradiction that one place it says that you cannot waive Shmuel says that by Shemitah, you can't agree that Shemitah should not release the loan. If I make a condition with you and I say, I'm giving the loan on the yes. Rav says you're allowed to do it. Rav says you're not allowed. No. Yair says yesh lo alav or no. Yesh lo, that means there is to him the prohibition of overcharging, and that means the prohibition remains according to Rav. And Shmuel omer ein lo alav. No, Shmuel says the claim of overcharging doesn't apply if you agreed in the beginning that you're waiving that right. So now the question of the Gemara is we have an apparent contradiction in two different cases. We have one case when it comes to Shemitah, Shmuel says that if I made an agreement and I gave the loan to the person, I, the lender, stipulated with the borrower that I'm giving you this loan, and the loan is due. Let's say the halacha is that loan is due. The case is the loan is going to be due before Shemitah, and I stipulated with you that I'm giving this loan that in case you're not going to pay me back, I want the Shemitah not to. The Shemitah does not release the loan. Gave it a condition that Shemitah doesn't release the loan. That condition doesn't help, and yet it seems like, why doesn't that condition help? Because I'm going against the Torah. Torah says Shemitah does take off a loan. So why is it that here, when it comes to the other law of overcharging, do we say that I could make a condition with the guy, according to Shmuel?
The one with the overcharging seller, it's like between him and the seller. The other case, it's between them and the Torah. Right? Does that make sense?
Okay, very good. Good. So yes, it could be what Nathan's saying. Is we'll see what Nathan said in the Gemara right now. What Nathan said. Listen to what the Gemara says. Ha'it ma'ala. The Gemara responds. We have an explanation of Shmuel's reasoning. Omar Ravanan. Ravanan says, "L'didi mifarshilei minei di Shmuel." It was explained to me by Shmuel himself. The great Shmuel, the way Shmuel was known as the expert in financial matters. He was known as that. He says he explained the difference between the different languages of conditions, and it's all in the way you stipulate the condition, the wording of the conditions. Almanas she'ein lecha alayona If a person says on the condition that you do not have the ability to come to me to have a claim that I overcharged you, then in olav to ona. If the condition was, like Nathan said, between me and the person, I said to the person, I'm giving you this loan, not this loan, this I'm selling you this item on the condition that you will not come back to me with a claim of overcharging. Meaning to say, I agree there's such a prohibition of overcharging. I am not denying that there's a law of overcharging, but what we're doing is between me and you, the buyer and the seller, I'm saying to you, would you waive that right of coming back to me to say that I overcharged? So if I stipulate it in that way, I am not going against the Torah. I am not saying that there's no such thing as overcharging. I'm not denying the fact. I am recognizing the fact there's something called overcharging, but I'm asking you to forgive that monetary right that you have. That means the overcharging, let's say, would kick in, meaning if I overcharge you, I would have to give you back technically if it was a certain base over a certain amount of money, I have to give it back to you. But I'm asking you if you're going to forgive that money, so to speak. But I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the overcharging wouldn't take effect. It would take effect, but you're in a certain sense, I recognize the overcharging, but there's a forgiveness on that overcharging. Now, so Shmuel holds in such a case, the Torah gave the person the right to waive his merit. I'm waiving, I am recognized, I am waiving that merit that I have. So I have the power, according to Shmuel, to waive that merit. Rav says, no, you can't waive that merit. Right? What do you say? Can't hear you. Right. Rav says you can't waive that merit. The Torah gave it before the deal was right, even before you did the deal. So Shmuel said, oh, very good. That's what the Gemara is going to say. Shmuel is going to say, that's what the Gemara is going to say now. 1 second. We're going to get to that in a second. Almanas, however, if you said almanas she'ein bo on no, if you say, and now we're going to translate the Gemara according to a Tosos understands the Gemara. Almanas she'ein bo on no. If you say, I'm giving you this, I'm selling you this item with making a condition that there's no the rules of ona. That there's no rule of ona, that the rule that there's no law of ona, there's no law of overcharging. If I just say to you, there's no that the law of over that. See, I didn't say you can't come back to me. I said that there's no rule. You know, we know there's a rule called overcharging. Good morning, Mr. Haber. We know there's a rule called overcharging, and I say that there's no rule of overcharging here. There's no rule of overcharging. If I say there's no rule of overcharging, I can't say there's no rule of overcharging. I can't say I'm making this condition. I'm selling you this item with a statement that there's no rule of overcharging. Because there is a rule of overcharging. The Torah has, if I say that you will not come back to me and you will forgive your rights of overcharging, that I could say. But if I go ahead and say there's no rule of overcharging, there is a rule called overcharging. And would you be willing? And would you be willing to accept it? Right.
I don't want to sell it, but here I'll sell it. If the price is $2,000, I'll sell it to you at $4,000. That's the only thing I'm willing to sell. Maybe overcharging, but this is what I want to sell.
Right. So there's a difference how you verbalize. But just to say I'm making you a sale, and there's no, and and there's no law of overcharging. To say there's no law of overcharging, you can't say there's no law of overcharging. There is a law of overcharging. The Torah has a law of overcharging. But if I say that you will not have the ability to go ahead and come back to me, if that I would be able to say. But to just say that, good morning, but just to say there's no rule of overcharging, I can't say that because there is a rule called overcharging. That's how Tosfos learns. Rashi learns that if he learns the Gemara that you're saying, I'm selling it to you on the condition, he says, I'm selling you on the condition that I'm not overcharging. And at the end of the day, he did overcharge it. So that's a hard, I mean, obviously, if you tell a guy, I'm selling you something on the condition that I'm not overcharging you, and then at the end you overcharge him, it's obvious it's not going to be a good deal. But Tosfos, the way Tosfos seems to be, Tosfos says, the language that he used, if you say ein bo'ona, is that you do not want that there's no such prohibition. You want to make a condition that there's no prohibition of ona. There's no prohibition of overcharging. That language would be a false statement. You can't make such a statement. It's like saying, I'm lending you the money, the Shemitah, and because I lent you the money, Shemitah, I want to make a condition that Shemitah doesn't release the loan. I want to make a condition. I'm lending you the money, but if you don't pay me back, Shemitah doesn't release the loan. But if I say that Shemitah doesn't release the loan, Shemitah does release the loan. If I say to you that I want on the condition that you should let your rights of the fact that the loan is released, you should give up that right that the loan is released, and you should forgive that I could say. But just to say that Shemitah doesn't release the loan, Shemitah releases the loan. Mr. Haber, you hear the difference? Is it clear? I can't, that's how Shmuel explains.
So you acknowledge the law.
I acknowledge the law. If you want, so that's what Shmuel says. If it's a financial case, financial situation, Ms. Jaime has a great point, but this doesn't apply to interest. But here it applies to, we have to understand, we'll see more about that. But when it comes to this law of Shemitah, of releasing of a loan, he says you have the ability to go ahead and make this type of condition with the borrower, but you're acknowledging, like you said, that there is this law that Shemitah would take off the loan, but we're asking each other, one's asking the other party to forgive that ability, to give up that financial right that you have. So that type of condition, Shmuel says, would be a proper condition. So the Gemara says, Hachinami. So again, if you say there's no ona, if I say I'm making you a sale that there's no law of overcharge, you can't say there's no law of overcharge. There is a law of overcharge. Yesh bo'ana. There is a law of overcharge in that situation. So Hachinami, the Gemara says, if I say that you, the borrower, should not release the loan when the Shemitah passes, so then the Shemitah will not release the loan, because I said to you, I'm lending you the money on the condition that you will not come back to me, and you'll remove your ability to have the loan released. So then it's between me and you. I'm not going against what the Torah says. So then I'm asking you to forgive your right. So then Shemitah will not take off the loan. But if he says, if he says, I want on the condition that Shemitah doesn't remove a loan, I cannot make a condition when you say that Shemitah doesn't remove a loan. Shemitah removes the loan. If the loan was due before the Shemitah, I can't say make a condition with you. I'm lending you the money. But if you don't pay me by the time Shemitah, Shemitah doesn't remove the loan. It's not true. Shemitah does remove the loan. So that's what the Gemara says. Then Shemitah misham toto. Shemitah would remove the loan. Now the Gemara continues. Now, by the way, so everyone needs to, the halacha l'maaseh, we have to look more into these laws of honor, right, of overcharging and undercharging. When it comes to business, when something has a certain value, a certain market value, and if you're overcharging, these are Torah laws, like we said, to protect the buyer, to protect the seller if he's undercharging, and this needs to be researched properly and from a halachic perspective. Here we got a little introduction from the Gemara that there is a real serious prohibition of the Torah of overcharging somebody. A lot of things in the market economy that we live today don't have exactly set value. There's a lot of fluctuation in prices, but certain things that have a certain value, market value, and you're overcharging, these are halachic questions that have to be looked into. Yes.
Right, and the guy in the store to do his owner, he's selling his room for $20. Can you come back and say the store 3 blocks down is selling it for $10? Like,
yeah,
where do you draw the line?
Right. These are very good questions. The application now in modern times, because is there
buy it for a certain price? The store owner,
right. So the question is, it's hard to define a market value on these type of items. That's why I like to use the case of a lottery ticket, gold, silver. These are things that have a clear, defined market value. But it could be over there also at a certain point. The guy is really out of maybe it could also reach such a thing. A guy sells a broom, for exorbitant amount of money. It might be considered that he's might be.
with the world of online nowadays, it's very tough to get ripped off without knowing the way to price something. You can look something up.
So that might also be something that might also be a sign that people might be forgiving of letting go on their rights in that case. These are all good questions that need to be researched in our economy today. But like we said, certain things that have a fixed value, and let's say I gave the example of a lady someone coming with baseball cards, right? Old baseball cards, and they don't know, the lady doesn't know the value. She has in her house these cards, and then you go in and you buy it off of her. And a lot of these pawn shops, if someone who owns a pawn shop, I think there's a lot of halachic, they have to ask a lot of halachic questions before going to such a business, because someone comes in and you give them whatever, they come into the store, they don't know, many of the people don't know the value of the watch. And there's a market value, there's a certain value on it's a gold watch, and they give you a certain price, and it's nowhere near the market value. Take that gold, you could just melt it down, silver, melt it down, and they're really not paying, they're not paying you the proper price. They're underpaying, and that's a problem. So I would say that we have to be very careful about such a business. A lot of halachic issues and such questions. Have a great day, everybody. Making money on someone else's non-knowledge of the market price, right? I bet that's how they make a lot of money. A lot of these shops, right? Have a great day, everybody. Charles, thank you for joining.
Rabbi, thank you. Chag Sameach.
Yes. Yes.
And Tom Kal.
You too, Joseph. Yes. What?
I think there are limitations on what can be overcharged. I don't think it's everything.
Right. I think land. There's a question regarding land. There's a discussion by Karka.
Food.
Yeah, but there's certain things that have, like Aruch HaShulchan talks about flour. In the old days, flour had a certain market price. There were certain basic food staples that had market. Eggs. Yes. Take care. It's a great day.